Howdy folks, Max Caveman here, bringing you my recap. So this is going to be a recap for the Fusion Strike, as I'm calling it, error case. You will see why, as I get into it, why I'm considering this as an error. So, in front of me right now, I have 4 piles. I have Holo Rares, Vs, Vmaxes, and then over this side I have Full Arts and above. So that's Full Arts, Alt Arts, and the Rainbow and Secrets. You tend to not get too many of these, so I'm grouping them all together. But I'm going to simply work my way through, sharing with you what I pulled, essentially. See what you feel like. Is this a good idea to buy a case or not? It may be simply easier to buy singles. I prefer to get at least this one case done, then try and buy the singles as I need. That way I can get a whole bunch of the commons and all the regular trainer cards. So that's my personal reason for buying this case, as well as you get to see what I pulled. But starting off with the regular Holo Rares, starting out with, let's make sure this is in focus, I got 2 copies of Butterfree. These are the only class Holo Rares that I pulled. I cannot remember if there were any more. I will check later. Big thing is, a lot of these holos have massive holo bleeds. For metal energies, metal types, I only got 1 copy of Mel Metal, which was a bit strange. Moving on to fighting, I did get 3 copies of the Landorus and 3 of the Steelix that are available. I feel like there's too many options for Holo Rares. They're going a little overboard, maybe, but I got 4 copies of the Galarian Obstagoon. So that's nice to get a full playset of that. This is not counting any potential reverse holos, which I may have more of these cards. These are the specific Holo Rares. I did get the 3 Grimmsnarl, which is nice. I do like Grimmsnarl. Then I got 5 copies of Deoxys. Deoxys could slot into any number of decks, which is good to get multiple copies, a nice large amount, especially since Fusion Strike is quite useful, and it does start to counter certain single Shrike and Rapid Shrike decks. That's good. I got 4 copies of the Dracopult Holo. I do have more copies of this, thanks to getting them in a pre-release box. So I have roughly 6 now, or maybe 7, but it's a nice card. Definitely utilizing that Fusion Strike really well. Moving on to my waters, I got 1 copy of Feraligatr. A little disappointing. I love Feraligatr's design, and being able to discard energies from your opponent active is really good. Then I got 4 copies of Swampert. I was thinking I actually had more of these. I did get 2 almost back to back, so I'm glad I only got 4, not too many. And I got 4 copies of Starmie, which is nice. Then moving on to the lightning or electric type, I got 5 Toxtricity. However, we got 2 variants of Toxtricity in this. We got a regular version and a Fusion Strike variant. So I got a 2 and 3. 3 towards the Fusion Strike is actually a bit better. because this can weaken your opponent's Vmaxes. If all your Pokemon in play are Fusion Strike Pokemon, your opponent's Vmax in play get 30 less health. And this stacks. This is not a once per ability, so you could, in theory, lower your opponent's Vmaxes down to their V counterparts' power levels. Health levels, I should say, sorry. So that was it for the regular holos. Moving on to the Vs, and there is a wide variety in here that is slowly but surely getting too large to reasonably get every card in each set. But I'm starting off with one Dodrio V and one Greedent. So that was it for the normal types. Sadly, the Greedent V Max is actually quite good. I'll get to that later. But only getting one of each is slightly disappointing. Then I got 2 copies of Boltund V and 3 of Pikachu. I know Pikachu is the mascot, so getting 3 may seem a bit better, and you can tell the print qualities. There's a little spark in the same spot that is slightly more visible on each of the cards, so you can actually get a bit of a display of print quality there. The Pikachu V is way too weak. The Boltund, much better, in my opinion. So, out of these two, I'd go for the Boltund. It's the same energies and roughly same attack damage, but that Boltund just is far superior to the Pikachu. So, moving on to grass types, I got 1 copy of Serena V. This is actually really useful if you tend to stack your bench with a lot of Pokemon to get effects off, but then as soon as you need to play a new one to get a specific effect off, and you can't because your bench is full, being able to clear it with this Serena is really useful. Just to put some extra power. Appleton has exactly the same problem as the Pikachu, but you do get to heal. It is slightly better in that regard, but we're getting a lot of just mediocre, here's a V Pokemon for the sake of it being a V type cards at the moment. So I got 1 copy of Rillaboom V. Very very energy heavy, but it is a rapid strike, so you should be able to get more energy attached to it quite faster. So then I got 1 copy of Breloom V. So that's interesting. A lot faster than Rillaboom, but you could probably say they're about the same power level, just faster and slower. Again, due to being single and rapid strike Pokemon. So I got 1 copy of Inteleon V. Inteleon is by far one of the most popular cards at the moment. If a deck doesn't have any type of Inteleon on it, then they're most likely doing something wrong. Even just as a support, I usually see people running a quick shooting or shady dealings Inteleon line just there as support. So only getting 1 is a little disappointing. Then we've got 1 copy of Greninja V, one of the most popular Pokemon in general. Just a little sad that I only got 1 copy, because that would have been really good for a water deck potential to build. Next I got 2 copies of Cinderace V. I've been hearing complaints that this is too common. I've technically got 4 of these now. I got 1 at a pre-release and 1 during a prize pack from an event. So this is, I think, the only V that I have 4 copies of from this set so far. But I got 2 copies of Chandelure V. Quite nice effects, and it's basically the same effects, just scaled up for the Vmax. But ideally, you could be one-shotting anything if your opponent has a decent sized hand, and it sort of forces them to play out cards, so they don't get hit by that effect as hard every turn. Next, moving on to Dark, I have 1 copy of Tyranitar V. It's a little lackluster because it's not a single strike. It's not the single strike Tyranitar, so you don't get the single strike support. Very cost heavy. Does hit big, but possibly not too big. But I got 2 copies of Gengar V, one of the main Pokemon that I was searching for in this set. Only getting 2 copies is kind of disappointing, but it means that it's not going to be the main focus of the deck. Next up we have Lucario V, which is sadly very lackluster. A 1-attack Pokemon with no effect, and it's at 3 energy for possibly mediocre damage. The 120 is not too bad, but this is just going to sit on your active or on your bench, just trying to get powered up for a bit. But moving on to Psychic, I'm actually going to show these 2 side by side. So I got 2 copies of Mew and Genesect V. These 2 work really well together. For the Fusion Strike deck, it is rather interesting because you can almost deck yourself out in a couple of turns due to the Fusion Strike system, but rather nice that I got equal parts, because you don't want to be too heavy on both of them. Ideally 4 of each would be best, but it is what it is. So moving on to the Vmaxes, and this is where the error really starts coming into play. So I got 7 Vmaxes in total, and that seems very low. And considering I didn't get any Vmaxes in 2 boxes, so that is where the error really comes in. But I got 1 copy of the Chandelure V. Really good. I think this might be the main attacker for a fire deck, but it most likely will be a Fire, Dragon, Lightning to be a Rayquaza supporter. I'll just see. I'm really interested in using the Chandelure. So I got 1 copy of Rillaboom VMAX. This does help out the V, so that 4 energy, but it's a rapid strike. It does make it quite useful, being able to do 40 to 2 of your opponent's bench. I got 1 copy of Cinderace V. Maybe a little bit too power heavy. You can't be attacking multiple turns in a row unless you're running memory capsule, but being able to do what is essentially a 240 attack means you're doing over most Vs. The only ones you're not hitting are something like Blissey or Snorlax, so that is rather useful. So I've got one copy of Greedent Vmax. Almost devastating card, being able to attack, defeat V's and taking 4 prizes. That can be really useful. So moving on, I've got the 2 cards that I was after the most in this set. Boltund Vmax as a one-of. I have gotten an additional one since opening this. I do want potentially one more. I'm most likely going to try and buy that off of someplace. But really good card. Really good with the Electrify Boltund. But I've got 2 copies of Gengar. This does allow me to do a 2-2 Gengar Vmax line, so that's actually really good. Means that I shouldn't be prizing too many Gengars and locking myself out of that strategy. So that is good. Preferably one more, but all in all, I did get quite low on the Vmaxes. So moving on to the full arts. So I got a Crabominable V, which now just reminds me I didn't get a single Crabominable V regular, so you can tell there are still cards that you're not going to get, because I didn't get all of them in the basic. Got one Serena V, and that was it for Pokemon full arts. I did group these together specifically because you don't get enough V full arts and trainers. But I got one copy of Schoolgirl, Dancer, Sydney, and Chili, Silent, and Cress. Some really useful supporters. I'm probably not going to use these cards themselves, and I'll most likely keep them as collectors items, but a nice little variety. Let's move on to the rainbows. So I did get a Greedent, Sydney, and Chandelure Vmax. I don't like counting these with the regular Vs, so I do get a couple more Vmaxes. I'm not going to be using them. I specifically collect the rainbows, so rather good. And it was nice getting the the full art and the rainbow for Sydney. So almost done. I got the alt arts. So managed to get one Mew V and the missing Sandaconda V alt art from Chilling Rain. So that's nice. Would have been better if this was in Chilling Rain, so then we got more like Fusion Strike cards with alt arts. But nonetheless, really good. One of the best pulls you could get in the set. Finally, before I wrap things up, the true reason this case was error. Now, if you are a bit confused, it is in the series that I did open these in Fusion Strike packs, but I have an Artillery and Level Ball gold cards from Battle Styles. These are Battle Styles cards that somehow made it into Fusion Strike. Well, that wraps up this recap. Hopefully you found it a little bit educational, I suppose, in what you should be expecting from products. Hopefully you enjoyed. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. See ya.